What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? What if Eugenio's second half of 2024 continues into next season? What if Drey Jameson's spring training is the real deal? Discussing the biggest what if scenarios for the Dbacks entering 2025. And is Jordan Montgomery officially in Madison Bumgarner territory?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Miller Thomas, multimedia journalist, and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we're going to be discussing the Dbacks rolling back. Monty starts a little bit this spring training and trying to put him in some easier situations. So we'll talk about him entering that Madison Bumgarner territory to start off the podcast. And then we'll get into some really fun what if scenarios for the Dbacks this upcoming season. This is based off things that we've seen players do or things that we think these players could do. If these things happen for the Dbacks, it can really impact this season in a positive way. So we'll talk about those positive what-if scenarios for the Dbacks after we talk about Jordan Montgomery becoming Madison Bumgarner. So first, I want to say before we get into the podcast, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast and let's discuss Jordan Montgomery turning into Madison Bumgarner, because we know based off the regular season last year, Monty already did his best impression of being Madbum because he was a 6.23 ERA last season, was getting crushed whenever he went up there, right? Didn't pitch deep into ball games, a lot of hard contact allowed. And even with that being said, you could still say his first season was maybe worse than Madbum's. I mean, it really depends. The thing is with Monty, he had 117 innings pitch of a 6.23 ERA. At least Madbum can say when he had a 6.48 ERA for the Dbacks, it was the 2020 COVID-shortened season. He only had 41 innings pitched, so the sample size wasn't that large for Madbum. And like Monty and Madbum, after Madbum's first season, I think I know I think a lot of us D-backs fans were just trying to say, COVID-shortened year, weird off season. Like, yes, we know Madbum was probably in the decline coming from San Fran, but he shouldn't be a guy north of 6. Madbum at worst should still be like a number 2 starter for you in your rotation. So yes, we expect a big bounce back from Madbum in 2021. And all off season, I was saying, Monty, weird offseason. He's been a guy who's been so good throughout his career. Maybe he's never going to be that good again, but no way he's the guy that we saw with the ERA north of 6. Like, I was saying the same thing for Monty entering 2025 that I said for Madison Bumgarner entering 2021 after he had that terrible 2020 year. And entering 2021 for Madbum, the first sign, the first indication that things might not get better was in spring training when Torey Lovullo had to move Madbum back to the fields. What he's doing with Monty right now, because what he's doing with Monty is no more Cactus League starts. We're going to put you in the backfields where there's no StatCast, no cameras, no scouts. Like, you're basically pitching in darkness. That's what the D-backs did for Madbum back in the day, because we knew he was bad. We knew he needed to get his confidence up, go against some easier competition, more minor leaguers on those backfields. And so it was a chance for you to get your confidence up and try to reestablish yourself as being an effective starter. And for Madbum, we know it never happened. It never materialized in Arizona. And now for Monty, I'm afraid it's going to be more of the same, because once you get sent to the backfield to pitch in front of nobody, against easier competition, like I think that's a bad sign, a bad indication by your team. And even Torey Lovullo discussed, like, yeah, we're trying to get his confidence up. We're trying to get him back to where he was before. And this was a move to do that. And right now, the situation looks dire at Monty. I think best case scenario at this point, he moves to the backfield and hopefully against that competition, he looks a little bit better, raises his value, even if it's a minuscule 2%, and then you can salary dump him to whoever wants him. Hopefully someone wants him at that point. But at this point, this is the best thing that the D-backs can do to salvage the value of Monty so you can trade him before this upcoming season, because I do think you need to get Monty off this roster before opening day, because if you don't, I just don't want to go into a season discussing Monty in the rotation. Okay, he's not in the rotation, but now he's in the bullpen. Like, I don't know if he's like, I just don't know what you do if you're the D-backs if Monty's on this roster opening day. I think it just causes too many issues, too many questions. So hopefully setting him to the backfields raises his value before the start of opening day. But talking about the spring training game from Tuesday, D-backs take down the Royals. Couple takeaways. Brandon Pfaadt, I liked the fact that after the game, went down to the bullpen and got his pitch count up. That's the mentality I want to see, because there's been some, guys trying to go in this D-backs rotation who I've discussed all offseason about their mentality and some comments that they made during the spring training, right? You guys probably know who that starter is because we just discussed him. But Brandon Pfaadt is someone who we know, going back to the D-backs postseason run to the World Series, so poised, so calm in those big playoff moments, right? Everyone discussed how it was like, yo, Pfaadt's going to Philadelphia on the road in elimination game, and he seems like he has absolutely no nerves. And going after the game yesterday, knowing you're fighting for a rotation spot, you're still one of the top ranked prospects over the last couple of years for the D-backs. You're still guaranteed a spot in this rotation eventually in at some point, whether it's later this season, next season. Like, the D-backs are going to have you in your future plans. But for Pfaadt, he's not waiting around. He's not sitting on his hands. He's saying, I'm going out there. I'm fighting for my spot in the rotation. I'm trying to become the best version of myself I can be. And he is someone that wants to work after the game and get his pitch count up and continue to work on his stuff. And I really like that mentality from Brandon Pfaadt. There needs to be more guys there's really just one guy in this D-backs rotation where he needs to pick up some of that mentality that Pfaadt has, because I love the fact they did this after the game. Go get in some more work, Brandon Pfaadt. And then the one other takeaway I had from Tuesday's win over the Royals, ADC Adrian Del Castillo looking improved defensively, threw somebody out at second base. That is huge, because we talk about the battle of backup catcher, him versus Jose Herrera. Jose we have in the lead because he's out of options. But if ADC shows you he's competent defensively with what we know his bat can be, it might be a tough job to win for Jose. But we do love to see at least the development of Adrian Del Castillo and his improved defense this spring training. Now we'll discuss the biggest what-if scenarios for the D-backs entering 2025 in segment number 2. But hey, now I want to talk to you guys about Supply House, because get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SHF for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, back here on the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And now let's discuss positive what-if scenarios for the Dbacks entering 2025. These are all player related, and it's based off flashes that we've already seen these players have, or maybe it's like the big flaw, the big hole in their game, and it's like if they finally fix that one issue, what could it mean for the Dbacks this upcoming season? The first what-if we're going to get into is based around our catcher, our starting catcher, I should say, Gabriel Moreno. And it's what if all the offensive flashes he showed over the last couple of years, what if he finally puts it all together? Because we know there's this level that Gabby hasn't tapped into where he could be one of the best offensive catchers in baseball, where he's a true impact bat, where he could be a guy that bats 300, good base runner, maybe some decent pop. He's not going to be a big home run guy, but maybe one of the league leaders in like doubles, especially at his position. Gabby has shown flashes at when he's batting at the top of the order. He's shown flashes in the clutch, but he hasn't exactly put it together yet over the course of a full season. And there was a stretch last season right before he got hurt where he looked really good. And there was even times where he was batting second for the D-backs and crushing it at the top of the lineup as a guy with tremendous contact ability, as a guy with tremendous play discipline. And it's like, can he do that over the course of a full season? He's been a guy that's been really good with runners in scoring position as well. Like, he's a clutch guy. He's a guy with good play discipline. He's a guy with good contact ability. Like, he's the perfect kind of guy. If you didn't know he was a catcher, you would definitely want him near the top of your lineup as a table setter. And I think if he can get to that next level as an offensive catcher, like imagine a monster season where Gabby's batting 300, 15 home runs, and like 30 doubles. Like, you'd be like, oh my God, this is the best catcher in baseball, knowing what he can do defensively. He's an offensive breakout season away from being a tier one catcher in Major League Baseball. And he's already pretty close to tier one. It just, his bat needs to get a little bit more consistent from game 1 to game 162. And if he could do that in 2025, his offense has a great chance of getting back to number 1 in runs scored. Another one, our big extension from this offseason was probably Geraldo Perdomo, and he's been working on a little leg kick. What if he taps into some power this upcoming season? Because for Perdomo, it's a lot of the same with Gabriel, where it's a good play discipline guy, doesn't strike out a ton, contact ability is solid, maybe not as good as Gabby's, but I mean, you don't lead the league in sacrifice attempts and hits and bunts without getting the barrel to the bat, right? And so for Perdomo, he's been a good player the last couple of years. All-star in 23, real game changer catalyst for this lineup when he came in off injury last season. Defensively, always improving. The biggest issue for Perdomo right now is probably the lack of power he displays, because you look at that slugging for him and it's just not good. We know his OBP is pretty solid because he does not strike out. He's good at drawing walks. But you look at that slug. It was a career high 374 last season, which is still not very high. 359 when he was an all-star. And for Perdomo, he doesn't need a 500 slugging, but can we get to 400? Can we get a little bit closer to that? If he can tap into some more power, 14 home runs and 1,206 at bats. If he could be a guy that could get to 10 to 12 home runs this upcoming season, that will change the trajectory of this D-backs offense so much. You're losing power in Christian Walker, Jock Peterson. Like, we're expecting, guys like Corbin Carroll to hopefully tap into some more power next season. But if a guy like Geraldo Perdomo, a guy historically who has not displayed any power at all, if he all of a sudden works on his game to the point where he's a 10 to 15 home run guy, I don't think that's going to happen in one season, but can we get more than 6? That's currently his career high. He had 6 home runs in 144 games in 2023. Like, can we get to 9 home runs in 2025? Maybe 12 home runs in 2026? Like, that's the trajectory I want to see Perdomo get on. And like I just said with Moreno, if his offense gets consistent from game one to game 162, what could it mean for the D-backs offense as a whole? Or imagine if Geraldo Perdomo, the guy who's the table setter, as your number 9 hitter, imagine if that guy as the number 9 hitter started hitting for power as well. Very scary stuff. How about this one? This one is a very simple what if scenario, but it just seems to never happen. Eduardo Rodriguez. What if he stays healthy? That's it. That's his what if scenario, because for Erod, his biggest issue throughout his career has been health. Only one season where he has more than 158 innings pitched. That was 2019. And of course, it was the only season where he gained Cy Young votes as well. When Erod is healthy, he has been a very good, very effective pitcher throughout his career. In 2023 was one of his healthier seasons. He still made only 150 innings pitched, but he had a 3.3 ERA. 2019, 200 innings pitched, a 3.8 ERA. Erod is at his best when he's feeling good. He can get into a groove, get into a rhythm, and just stay healthy. Of course, when the guy's always on the pine, always in the trainer room, he's never going to be able to get consistent results. And for Erod, he has shown you when he can get a streak of starts together, he is going to look like the best possible version of himself. The issue is it seems like he's never able to stay long enough on the mound, on the field to put together a string of really good starts. And so for the D-backs, entering next season, the biggest thing for Erod is his health. He looked decent at the end of last season. When looking at his strikeout totals, some of his earned run counts, like 3 of his last 4 starts are pretty decent to end last season. And Erod, I do think, is someone that has better bounce back potential than a Jordan Montgomery. From what we've seen from Erod at the start of this season, from the way he even ended last season with the strikeout totals, I think Erod definitely has a higher chance of bouncing back to at least an all-star level, way more than a Jordan Montgomery. So even though I've been saying a lot this offseason, I want to trade both Monty and Erod, I wouldn't be upset if Erod stayed on this D-backs roster entering 2025. I don't feel the same about Jordan Montgomery. The last what-if scenario for segment number 2 that I want to discuss is, what if Pavin Smith's 2024 wasn't a fluke? Because we, of course, know he is replacing Jock Peterson, and I think we know the answer to that question. He can be Jock Peterson 2.0 if 2024 wasn't a fluke. It sounds crazy, but you just look at the numbers of what he produced last year in 60 games. Pavin Smith had 9 home runs in 60 games and an 896 OPS. And I don't know if I believe any of the stats that I'm reading for Pavin Smith, but that's what he did last year. Jock Peterson in 132 games had 23 home runs. So if you just double Pavin Smith's games from last year, 60 to 120, that's at least 18 home runs. It's probably pretty close. It probably doesn't feel too far off from what Jock Peterson gave you last year. If he puts up a similar OPS to what he did in the 60 games to what Jock Peterson did in 132 games last year, like, it's going to feel like a similar season if Pavin Smith has 18 home runs and an 825 OPS. The question is, do I believe Pavin Smith can do that? Because his knock has always been not enough power at all for a first baseman, and not a consistent offensive weapon, and definitely not a defensive player. And so now he's going to have his chance to prove everyone that he's been working on his offensive game. He doesn't have to go out there and play defense. Like, this is going to be the best opportunity Pavin's ever going to get. You only have to go against right-handed pitchers. You're not going to have to play defense. You're just DHing full time. Like, if Pavin Smith does not come through in this kind of situation, he will probably never, ever come through for the D-backs. It is make or break time for Pavin Smith, and we're praying he doesn't break. We're praying he makes it, because Jock Peterson was a monster for the D-backs last year, and we're putting a lot of pressure on Pavin Smith right now to hopefully replace that production. So we're all saying the what-if scenario for Pavin Smith, we're saying we're hoping it's a break instead of a make for Pavin Smith. Now, I got a few more what-if scenarios I want to discuss for you guys in segment number 3. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offers one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. My favorite Wonderful Pistachios I actually have right here. Sorry to the audio listeners only. You're going to have to go to YouTube for this one because right next to me, I got 3 of my favorite flavors here. And this is what is great about Wonderful Pistachios. Unsalted right here, no shell. Chili roasted, no shell. And then this one is roasted and salted with the shell. The great thing about Wonderful Pistachios is the variety. You could get salted, unsalted, with shell, no shell. Get a little kick to it if you wanted to. No matter what flavor you want, they have a variety and a profile that fits just for you. So please go get yourself some Wonderful Pistachios. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, and let's go through our last few what-if scenarios for the Dbacks for this upcoming season. Next up, what if Alek Thomas learns to hit? Yes, Alek Thomas, because if he learns to hit, Alek Thomas could be an all-star outfielder in Major League Baseball. Because right now, Jake McCarthy, the season he had last year, if Jake McCarthy, when he was hot during the summer, if that happened in the first half of last season, Jake McCarthy could have been a guy on the all-star team last year because he was so good post all-star break when everyone got hurt. Jake McCarthy was carrying the team for the D-backs, and he improved defensively. Like, if Alek Thomas learns to hit, he can be Jake McCarthy 2.0. Like, imagine if you had 2 Jake McCarthys on this team. Guys that could bat 280, really good runners. Maybe they don't have elite pop, but has some gap power, just trying to hit singles and doubles. That's all we want Alek Thomas to be. All we want Alek Thomas to be is Jake McCarthy as an offensive player. So if Alek Thomas learns to hit, he can be an all-star. He could be Jake McCarthy, and we'll be happy with that. We don't need Thomas to hit monster home runs like he did in the postseason. We don't need Alek Thomas to have 150 RBIs. Just be Jake McCarthy good as an offensive player, as a producer, and every D-backs fan would be happy because we know you're one of the best defensively already. Adjust your bat. So please, this what-if scenario, please turn into at least Jake McCarthy as an offensive player. Next up, Drey Jameson. What if his spring training is the real deal? Because Drey Jameson this spring training has looked legit. He is throwing hard, 100, 101 consistently. And if that guy is legit with the 2.63 ERA we saw in his first 65 innings of his D-backs career, if you got the new velocity paired with some of the old stats, yeah, Drey Jameson. Like, I love J-Mart, but maybe Drey Jameson is the closer of the future. I still think J-Mart has better stuff overall because even though Drey could touch 100, J-Mart could hit like 102, 103, 104. I think J-Mart has better stuff off of that as well, with like some of the split finger action he has. And so I would still choose J-Mart over Drey Jameson as the closer of the future. But think about where I was for this Dbacks podcast when I took over in 2020. Dbacks had the worst closing situation in baseball. Dbacks had the worst bullpen. And now it's like J Mart versus Drey Jameson. Dbacks have two legitimate potential candidates for closer of the future. And we still could potentially use Drey Jameson down the line as a starter. Like there's still a world where Zach Gallen leaves next offseason, and now maybe it's Drey Jameson fighting for that rotation spot. And maybe even Drey Jameson makes some spot starts this season for the D-backs with injuries. And so I'm just so in on Drey. I like him more as a reliever, as a high leverage back end arm. But once this rotation starts to thin out with potentially Gallen and Merrill Kelly leaving next offseason, I wouldn't mind giving Drey Jameson a shot to be in this rotation. Next up, what if Jordan Lawlar's bat is ready? I think that could be a very fun question because we know his defense is ready. We know he's up for that utility role because of his defense. But what if his bat is ready? Does that mean the D-backs should consider trading a Perdomo or a Eugenio, maybe trading like a Randall Grichuk so he could be your righty DH? I don't know, but Jordan Lawlar is like ready to go right now. Just having him on your bench and mixing him in on days where you could platoon, if there's injury, like it's just another weapon to have stashed in your pocket. And I also just think it's also really nice to have as a potential trade chip for other guys on your roster. I think if Jordan Lawlar's bat is ready, I don't think it makes Jordan Lawlar a trade piece, but maybe you start thinking about some of the other pieces on your roster, like a Eugenio, a Geraldo Perdomo. Like, I just wonder if you start sniffing around the market. I think if you're a good team at the deadline, you're not trading away good players like Eugenio or Geraldo Perdomo. But I just wonder if the D-backs would think about it if there's like another hole on their roster, if the rotation got for some reason really beat up, or if there was some, like if you really needed a different position in your lineup, let's say like Josh Naylor got hurt and it's like, okay, Lawlar's crushing it, Perdomo's crushing it. Eugenio is a pending free agent. Let me trade him now to see if I could get a different piece that could help me out. So just think adding Jordan Lawlar's bat into the mix, if it's ready, it's just a fun wrinkle for this upcoming season. Maybe he turns into like a Rookie of the Year candidate and the D-backs are able to get extra draft picks out of it as well. I just think Jordan Lawlar time could just be a fun narrative for this upcoming season. But like we always say, he's probably going to start the season in AAA so he could get everyday opportunities as a starter for the Reno Aces. But I just think it would be a fun wrinkle if Jordan Lawlar did crack the D-backs opening day roster. ADC, Adrian Del Castillo. What if he plays some defense? That is the big what if scenario for him, because if he plays defense, I think he does steal the job from Jose Herrera because of his bat with what he could do as a lefty paired perfectly with Gabriel Moreno. You could really use ADC as a real weapon. And like I've been saying all offseason, if Pavin Smith struggles at the plate, I could see ADC taking over as that lefty DH. And so if he learns to play defense, he could be our go-to lefty DH and our go-to backup catcher, and maybe it frees up another spot on this roster for like a different utility piece. And so I think ADC's defense can go a long way for Arizona. And the final what if scenario is Eugenio. What if he continues his 2024 second half in 2025? Now, I don't know if he could continue it on the same level because that is Babe Ruth essentially. And we've seen Eugenio be Babe Ruth before, because the second half of 2024 is what Eugenio looked like pre-pandemic. In 2018 and 2019, this guy averaged 40 home runs, was like a 275 average, and a 900 OPS guy. Still a strikeout machine, but if you hit 40 home runs, 100 RBIs, and have a 900 OPS, you're Kyle Schwarber. And so Eugenio, if he could replicate second half over the course of a full season in 2025, which is possible because he's done it multiple times pre-pandemic, which of course is a long time ago, that is an all-star and MVP candidate that the D-backs would have on their roster that they did not expect to have. So we'll see if Eugenio can do that. And if he can, monster season incoming for Suarez. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.